Welcome back to the Play by Play podcast. This is episode number 45, where today we will be doing a full 2024 2025 fantasy football guide for PPR leagues only. I want to thank you guys so much for tuning today. I hope you guys are having an incredible day. I'm very excited to announce that we have a brand new background in the back. I just moved back to college and in Las Cruces, New Mexico at New Mexico State University, and so I'm very excited. We have the Allen Iverson poster over here. We have NFL and NBA players going along that wall. It's a super cool background, and I'm hoping to work on the quality of the camera and the microphone as I continue to unpack and move in more stuff. So this video isn't as quality as you were used to seeing. Don't worry, I'm working through those difficulties. If you have not yet, if you are watching this on YouTube, please feel free to subscribe, leave a like down below, comment, and share with all your friends. And if you have not already, there'll be a bar popping up right here to follow the podcast on all social medias, that being TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter, where you can be notified whenever the podcast posts. And you can see my immediate reactions to breaking news throughout the NFL, NBA, and collegiate sports worlds. All of the ads are going to be down below, or like I said, the bar will list them right here. Please give them a follow. I would greatly appreciate it. Now, fantasy football is in full swing. There are a lot of people who probably already did some drafts already. I know that a couple of friends that have already finished up some family league drafts, and they're already set and ready to go before the start of the season. But for those of you who maybe have some drafts upcoming, those of you who are maybe trying to catch onto some patterns when it comes to fantasy football and what to look for in your players in your team, for some of you who are maybe looking to replace certain players that are on this list with people that are on the waiver wire, this is the video today for you. Now, I want to preference a couple things. Number one, we'll not be going over defense and kickers. I've left those two positions out. We'll only be going over the main positions, that being quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and tight end. And like I said at the beginning of the episode, this is for PPR leagues. If you're new to fantasy football, PPR means points per reception league, meaning that your receivers and running backs and tight ends all get 1 point per the reception you get. So it's a lot more of a high-scoring league. Receptions and targets mean a lot more, whereas in non-PPR leagues, people a lot of times will preference quarterbacks a lot more, will likely preference running backs as well, just because you don't get points per down. You don't get points per target. You're simply getting points for scoring the football and for your yardage. But in PPR leagues, positions such as wide receiver, tight end, receiving backs are a lot more highly valued in these drafts. So keep that in mind. Also keep that in mind that there's not a set order for this. Whether you are the number 1 overall pick, whether you have the number 10 overall pick, whether you're in a 10-man league, whether you're in a 12-man league, whether you're in a 15-man league, obviously things are going to be a lot different when it comes to your draft. So just keep that in mind. Certain players might go higher, and you just might have to adjust to that. Maybe some people are high on some of the players that I have as well, and so that they're going to be taking them a little bit earlier. Maybe certain people are preferencing quarterbacks and running backs a little bit more, and so wide receivers will be sliding down, so you do not have to look for them right away. It all depends on how your draft is going to go. But if you need a little bit of a guide, if you need to write down a little bit of a list of people that you should be looking at, this is the video, and I'm going to explain to you the reasoning behind each and every single one of my picks. Let's move into it starting with the quarterback position. I have 4 guys for you to draft. I have 3 guys for you to avoid. The 4 guys that you should first look into drafting, that being Anthony Richardson, Jaden Daniels, Will Levis, and Justin Fields. Now, I want to preference this before I go into specifics. First of all, if you're in a PPR league, do not prioritize quarterback. I just said this. Do not prioritize quarterback. There will be solid quarterbacks that will still be able to get you 20, 25 points in your league down the draft board in the 4th or 5th rounds. Do not be the guy that goes out there in the 1st round, in the 2nd round, and picks 2 quarterbacks right off the bat because you want Patrick Mahomes and Joe Burrow. It's very likely that you're not going to be able to start most of those guys unless you're in a league where you're able to start 2 quarterbacks, where you have an option position instead of a flex position. Chances are you are not going to be able to start those 2. So why go out and waste 2 picks on 2 superstar quarterbacks? if you're not going to be able to use them. Build the length of your squad, go into running backs, go into wide receivers, go into tight ends as well. Tight ends are a very, very underrated position. Save the quarterbacks for later in the draft, for the fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh round. Those places you will still be able to get valuable quarterbacks. Some of the quarterbacks that I'm listing here will be available in those rounds. Now, secondly, when it comes to quarterbacks, you want to look for dual threat quarterbacks, a quarterback that can throw the ball very well, obviously, and a quarterback that can run the ball. That is going to give you a multitude amount of points. Now, you still want to look at efficiencies when it comes to passing the ball. You don't want a quarterback that is inefficient and is just going to get most of his points off of running outside of the pocket. But you do want to look for somebody who's going to bring that extra edge to running the ball and grabbing you some extra points. And we start there with Anthony Richardson, a quarterback who everyone this year is very, very high on. And I completely get it. Indy has added some serious weapons around Richardson. While they already have Michael Pittman and Jonathan Taylor, they were able to draft Adonai Mitchell. Anthony Richardson has a seriously solid offense around him, along with having a great, great head coach behind him in Shane Steichen, offensive mind. For me, Richardson, the only concern that I have about him is his injury concerns. He is a little bit of a weird archetype in which I believe he's about 6'4", 240 pounds. The dude is a little bit thicker, but still seems to have some issues staying on the field. I believe only played about 4 or 5 games last year, but in the 4 or 5 games that he did play, he showed some pretty solid stuff. Showed some serious pop when it comes to throwing the ball down the field. And when you have guys that are going to be able to make yards after catch, such as Michael Pittman, when you have Jonathan Taylor outside the backfield, Anthony Richardson is a very, very appealing dual threat quarterback that will probably look to go a little bit early because a lot of people are on him. But if he is able to slide, like I said, to that 4th round mark, would not be mad at all if you guys go out and get Anthony Richardson. Jaden Daniels, another dual threat archetype. Daniels has that dual threat where he has shown ability throughout the preseason that we have seen to make these big plays. He has shown that ability just like he did in college to turn dead plays into positive yardage. And despite what it might seem, Washington does not have that many horrible weapons around him, especially on the outside with their receivers in Terry McLaurin and Dotson to make plays. And they always seem to have very solid, speedy, and pass-catching running backs again that could serve as checkdowns for Jaden Daniels. The only issue that you have to look out for him is he does tend to take sacks a lot. So if those contacts do tend to pile up, you could also have injury concerns for him. You could also just have some negative rushing yardage where he gets stopped in the backfield, and that could put you down a couple of points. But if you want somebody who's going to maximize the most out of every play, if you want somebody who's going to be able to extend the ball downfield, if you want somebody who's going to be able to turn something that is completely nothing into even a 5-yard gain, Daniels is that guy, and he's going to be able to get you, squeeze out every single point that he can out of every game that he plays. Will Levis, the 26th ranked quarterback in this quarterback fantasy ranking, PPR rankings class. Now, I'll be honest, if Will Levis can't be productive with these weapons that he has, I'm not sure how I would look at him by the end of the season. You have Calvin Ridley, you have DeAndre Hopkins, they got Tyler Boyd for you. They signed Tony Pollard. You have Tajay Spears, who I'm going to get to in a little bit. Levis has a lot to work with. And he showed last year some pretty solid abilities to also make big plays. He's somebody that really reminds me of a Drew Lock type player. Somebody that has a rocket arm, somebody who is not afraid to take chances down the field, and that could turn into some big plays. Now, yes, the offensive line is not perfect. But if new coach Callahan can put Levis in the right spots to be successful, Levis is another guy who will be able to get you those 20, 25, 30-yard plus passes, make big plays consistently, and get it to receivers who are available enough of a playmaker with Calvin Ridley's speed, with Tajay Spears' speed out of the backfield, with DeAndre Hopkins' ability to go up and grab balls over cornerbacks. He has reliable weapons that will be able to make those plays happen. So he can take the risk, and he has talent around him that is going to be able to relieve him if mistakes are made. And finally, I have the 35th ranked quarterback in this PPR ranking class, and that is Justin Fields, which there isn't a lot to say here with Justin Fields. Because barring an injury, barring terrible, terrible play where the Steelers just don't think that they can redeem him, Russell Wilson will be starting all 17 weeks, no matter what. However, Fields will continue to compete in practice. Fields will continue to learn. And if the Steelers feel like they do need to go in that different direction from an aging Russ who just cannot come back from the regression that he had in Denver, Fields could definitely be somebody who could pop in right away and be another incredible dual threat that will be able to maximize it all out of every single play. Me personally, I would not draft him in my draft, but I personally will be keeping my eyes laser focused on him on the waiver wire and keeping a laser focus on the quarterback situation in Pittsburgh to see how that is shaping out. Because if Russell Wilson does get pulled, if there seems to be a lack of confidence, a lack of a relationship there between him and the Steelers, Fields is going to be somebody who is going to be all the rage in the market for people wanting to get. So if you start to see that quarterback situation start to decline, if you need a potential possible backup, pick up Fields later into the season because if things are not working out, he is going to be available and people are going to want him. Now, as for quarterbacks to avoid, I have Jalen Hurts, Aaron Rodgers, and Deshaun Watson all in that list. Now, you may be saying, what the heck? You said that dual threat quarterbacks have an advantage. Yeah, but in Jalen Hurts' case, I would scratch that off. Now, sure, when looking at the Eagles' offense, Hurts is pretty set. Adding Saquon Barkley is huge in that backfield. Adding that to Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown, they also still have a solid O-line despite some of the retirements that they had this past season. The issue for me is the chemistry. Hurts and head coach Nick Sirianni appear to be butting heads a lot, and Sirianni has not done a great job at putting Hurts in the best position. The Eagles played so many close games last year, too many to count, that they did not mean to be in. I rewinded back to the Buffalo game that they had last year. Jake Elliott did not have to hit a 59-yard field goal in crazy, crazy weather to save that game and put them into overtime. The Eagles were in control of that game from the beginning, and Nick Sirianni simply gave up the lead. He was calling very bad plays. He was trying to keep passes very, very short, and they just were not advancing the ball enough. He was not using Jalen Hurts' mobility. He was not using Jalen Hurts' arm and strength to his ability to make passes down the field. He was trying to be conservative, and that is exactly how the Bills were able to get back into that game. Speaking on chemistry, you also have to add to the fact that Hurts will now not be playing with his Hall of Fame center, Jason Kelce. That could create an uncertainty under center. That could create uncertainty and broken chemistry when it comes to handling snaps, because every center could potentially snap the ball differently. Every center calls out plays differently and sees things very differently. Every center doesn't double the way and help out other offensive linemen, such as Jason Kelce. And also adding in Saquon Barkley into this mix into the backfield. Sure, that's a benefit in being a weapon, but with his running ability, with his ability to get off screens, that could eat into Jalen Hurts' attempts throughout the season. Next, we want to talk about lack of chemistry, at least what we saw from last year throughout NFL Hard Knocks. You have Aaron Rodgers. Rodgers, who should also be much more ecstatic with New York's offensive situation. Adding in 2 tackles on the outside, giving him some weapons, something that Green Bay never did with him in his tenure here. The issue here is not the chemistry issues. The issue here is I do not trust Aaron Rodgers. Mobility, athleticism, and innovation have always been huge parts of Aaron Rodgers' game. And now with his Achilles injury, you would have to think that that is taken away at least a little bit. There's going to be a little bit of regression there. And adding on to that, while New York has upgraded their offensive line on the outside, the guard play is still not tremendous. So you should be expecting Aaron Rodgers to have a lot more pressure in his face, despite them upgrading the offensive tackle position, which I might add has had some injury concerns, both Morgan Moses and Tyron Smith, and are on their last legs of the career. Because of this, Aaron Rodgers is going to have to rely on his backfield a lot. And with Breece Hall becoming more and more of a superstar as we got to the end of last year, he is going to be put into a lot more situations to relieve some of that pressure off of Rodgers, to run to the outside and to get the defense off of Rodgers' skin, which again, just like we said with Saquon Barkley, is going to take away from some of his attempts. And And Achilles is an injury that is very, very difficult to get away from, and is something that could possibly repeat itself again. So look out for Aaron Rodgers' injury concerns. Then we go from two teams that have added on to their offense to a team that still has not done the best at adding offense around their franchise quarterback, and that is the Cleveland Browns and Deshaun Watson. Cleveland's offensive situation around Watson is average at best. Watson's play has not even been close to average at best. He has not even played a full year in Cleveland. And even so, he has not even posted the same numbers he posted when he was a superstar at the end of his time with the Houston Texans. When you add on to the fact that Nick Chubb is coming off an injury, and the best number two that they could get is Jerry Jeudy, who also has had injury concerns and has not been able to pop off as being the 15th overall, and I believe the second receiver picked in that draft class, somebody who was supposed to be the best route runner in the 2020 draft class, somebody who has been very, very disappointing. That leaves Deshaun Watson in a very desolate and disappointing position for himself. One that I don't think that he is going to be able to make much work with if he can stay healthy throughout the full season. Moving on to running backs. Running back, a very interesting decision to choose because they can receive too. So it's going to be very interesting where you see the most depth at when it comes to this position. If you see more depth at running back, I would suggest going to your receivers first. If you feel like you get some good receivers late, definitely go and get some running backs early. Just kind of play around with that. But for the running backs that you should look to draft, I have David Montgomery, Tajay Spears, Raheem Mostert, J.K. Dobbins / Gus Edwards, and I also have Tyrone Tracy Jr. Going over some of these guys, we have David Montgomery, the 25th ranked running back in this PPR class. Now, Jahmyr Gibbs is undoubtedly set to be the starter for the Detroit backfield. However, Gibbs has been battling with a hamstring injury throughout the offseason. It's an injury that has lagged so much that I believe they have decided to pull him out of the entire preseason and save him until the start of the season. However, despite splitting carries last year, David Montgomery was still able to reach 1,000 yards and double-digit touchdowns last year. So look for Montgomery to repeat that double-digit TD total and to be a solid flex play, especially if Gibbs goes down and he is promoted to being the starter. Speaking as somebody who was backing up a tremendous back, you have Tajay Spears not far behind at the 28th running back spot. Spears has unfortunately had to sit behind Derrick Henry to start his career. However, with the Mack truck moving to Baltimore, Spears now has the backfield under his control. Not only does he have very impressive speed, but he also shows ability catching checkdowns on the backfield and turning them into big plays. Now, Tony Pollard's age and lack of an O-line might stifle him throughout the season. This is not the same offensive line that Tony Pollard had in Dallas, where you had 3-4 all-pros behind it protecting you, where you had it where you could run to the outside or to the inside where you had options. This Tennessee O-line is dreadful, despite adding J.D. Latham to it. So, if Pollard is able to get off to a slow start, look for Spears to kind of be that bumper back, kind of come from the back and try to relieve some of that pressure off of Pollard to try and make more big plays using his speed and being as an extra receiver either from the backfield or on the outside. Look for Spears to get checked out a lot, especially as Will Levis will look to get the ball out very quick with his poor offensive line. Speaking of quickness, you have Raheem Mostert as the 32nd ranked running back in this class. Now, I want to make this very clear for you guys. If you have the opportunity to pick up Devon Achane, do it. The rookie, now sophomore, had a very, very impressive showing in his first season, despite missing a handful of games. Similar to Spears, Achane's pass catching and speed makes him a perfect number one option in the backfield in Miami's high-paced offense. However, there is injury concern, and if Achane does go down, Mostert can more than fill in for Achane's missing presence. He once upon a time played a very, very similar role in Miami's offense to his successor, Devon Achane. Despite being 32 years old, still has a lot of gas in the tank, and with him getting off to a slow start to start the season with Achane being over him, he will likely explode towards the second half of the season when Achane begins to slow down. Then you get to guys who are a lot lower on this list and may not be as reliable, but you could look to potentially break out. Start with J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards in Los Angeles because the Chargers do not have a superstar back. They do not have Austin Eckler. They are really banking on two wild cards to try and explode for Harbaugh's offense, who, by the way, loves to run the ball, if you did not know that already in Michigan. Dobbins would be my favorite option. He too has great speed, great pass catching ability that can turn into big plays. But in his last 2 years, he has only combined for 8 total games played. Because of this, the Chargers are also looking to bring in a power back in Gus Edwards to offset and hopefully produce the 800 yards he had last year in Baltimore. Both backs are very solid options. It really depends on who you want to take the gamble on. You have the explosive but injury-prone Dobbins, or the reliable but lower-ceiling Edwards, who is likely going to be consistent at giving you anywhere from 8 to 11, possibly even 13 points, but is never going to be somebody who you're going to see outshine and score 20 plus, 25 plus points in one game. And finally, you have Tyrone Tracy Jr. at the 65th ranked running back, somebody who right now is backing up Devin Singletary, who is the de facto #1 running back. But rookie Tyrone Tracy Jr. has been getting much more considerable attention and reps with the #1 squad. And if Singletary doesn't impress right away, look for the Giants to go to Tracy, as they do not have a lot of spark in their offense. Then moving to running backs that you would look to avoid. Start with Kyren Williams. Kyren is a very solid running back option. I just feel that they are better though. At the spot that he is going to be on the draft board, I believe he is the 6th ranked running back on the PPR board. I don't find him worth it due to the fact that he has only played one season. A season that he was also injured in. Now, sure, when he was on the field, he was very productive, was able to post up an 1,000-yard season. But Puka Nacua now adds another weapon to Sean McVay and Matt Stafford's aggressive passing offense. And if that trend continues, Williams will not be as productive. I like Kyren, but there are several running backs I like better than him in the spot that he's at, including somebody who is only 3 picks above him in the #1 running back in Christian McCaffrey. We move to Aaron Jones, somebody who since his 16-touchdown season in 2019 has slowly declined as a scoring back. While his yards have had some ups and downs, he will have an advantage at being a running back in Kevin O'Connell's system. But coming off of injury doesn't give him the best of chances to be great, and Minnesota will definitely look to lean towards their passing game this season. Jones is regressing. He's not in a favorable offense for him, despite being with a great offensive coach. And with him being also 32, 33 years old, the sun is setting for Aaron Jones. We'll see if it sets in Minnesota, but I would look to avoid him. Another person who has shown some big regression is Javonte Williams in Denver. Hurts my heart a lot. But Aaron Jones, he was dealing with injury. Javonte Williams is also dealing with injury. Following an ACL tear in 2022, Javonte Williams was not able to find that second gear he had in his rookie year to push through defenders and fight for yards like we saw constantly, very similar to how we saw Terrell Davis do it back in the late 90s. His longest run of the year last year for Denver was only 21 yards, and he was citing a lack of ability to generate big runs. Following that, in the second half of the season, we saw Denver split carries and downs more and more between Williams and Jeremy McLaughlin, with the latter showing greater ability in the short passing and speed game, because we know that Sean Payton loves to have that check down game. And if Bo Nix is in charge of this offense this year, look for McLaughlin to get a lot more looks, just simply because it's a short pass game with both Sean Payton and with Nix. They're going to be looking for the screens, they're going to be looking for the check downs, and they're going to be looking to generate speed out of that and get down the field quickly. That is the game that they play. Javonte Williams, much more power, much more of a slow plotter, is not included in this offense right now. And with his inability to get through this past injury that he's had, he is definitely on the decline. Then we move to wide receivers. Some of the wide receivers that I would look for you to target is Malik Neighbors, Calvin Ridley, Xavier Worthy, Marvin Mims, and Dontavion Wicks. Starting with Neighbors, who was ranked top 10 in receptions in all of college football last year. This is a PPR league, points per receptions. Neighbors is targeted, and he is targeted a lot in any offense that he is. The man is special with his ability to make plays downfield. with his bulk of speed, his explosiveness getting off the line, and you combine that with the fact that the Giants do not have a reliable run game or receiving option outside of Neighbors. Like I said, it's Devin Singletary, it's Tyrone Tracy, it's Darius Slayton. It's those type of guys in this offense that are not going to be able to develop much plays off the line. So look for Malik to get a bulk of the targets this next year, which could rank him over potentially more experienced wide receivers such as Mike Evans, Puka Nacua, and even A.J. Brown, who are ranked in the PPR league rankings ahead of him right now, who have more competition to compete for their targets. Mike Evans has Chris Godwin, Puka has Cooper Kupp, A.J. Brown has Devontae Smith. There's going to be much more of a split there where Malik is the de facto number one, and he's going to be in a bunch of targets no matter who the quarterback is in New York. Then you have Calvin Ridley, who was one of my biggest sleepers this previous year. He was toward the top of my list last year. He's towards the top of my list again this year. Now I know what you are thinking. You just said that guys such as Mike Evans, Puka Nacua, and A.J. Brown have a lot of competition. Calvin Ridley has so many other offensive options around him. But like I said, Tony Pollard does not have that Dallas offensive line anymore. He's going to have to do a lot more fighting for yards. And despite posting his first 1,000-yard season for the first time in 3 years, DeAndre Hopkins is entering year 10 at age 32 and had some rough years in Arizona. So look for Ridley to once again, like Malik, to be the explosion in the offense, getting yards and targets by getting behind the defense, down the length of the sideline like he did with Trevor Lawrence last year, and relieving Levis just like he did with Lawrence in Jacksonville. Then you have my most hyped up and high on rookie, Xavier Worthy. Last year, Rashee Rice ranked third in yards after catch. He made a lot of his bread and butter off of catching 5-yard crossing routes and running upfield, as we saw with Tyreek Hill before. Worthy brings even more ability in that speed department. And with Marquise Brown having injury issues, look for Worthy to try and slide into that number 2 spot and do things that we saw players such as Sky Moore and Kadarius Toney not be able to do, which is simply catch the ball and make simple plays. And finally, if you're looking for a huge sleeper, like I said, if you're in a 15, 16-man league, Marvin Mims and Dontayvion Wicks at 67th and 69th wideout, respectively, are very great options. Both Mims and Wicks were limited to under 40 receptions this past year. Both were limited by similar reasons, either being incoming rookies that rank lower on the depth chart, being with Mims, or being somebody such as Dontayvion Wicks, who was behind guys who also coming in as rookie were more solidified, such as Jaden Reed, Christian Watson, and Romeo Doubs. Mims was pretty much limited to a return/slot role, being behind Sutton and Judy, and didn't get very much favor from Russell Wilson. Wicks, meanwhile, had to sit behind Dobbs and Watson and fellow 2023 draft pick Jaden Reed. However, despite grabbing 20 less receptions, Wicks only had 150 less yards than Reed and was ranked one of the best receivers against man coverage last year, even scoring a touchdown in the divisional round against the San Francisco 49ers. So look for Wicks to start slow, but find a way to fight his way up the depth chart. And meanwhile, Mims is somebody who can be incorporated into crossing routes, screen passes, and has return man upside, which also gets you points in fantasy. As for receivers to avoid, you have Keenan Allen. Let's be honest, someone on the Chicago Bears offense this year has to be the odd man out. There's just too much talent for everyone to get their share. And even though he's listed as the number 2 wide receiver on the depth chart, it is not far-fetched to say that Keenan Allen at age 32, he cannot be the guy that is left out. That it becomes even more unlikely when you look at recent fan concern on Keenan Allen's physical condition, where there are rumors of him gaining as much as 20 pounds following his trade for the Los Angeles Chargers, which will slow him down with already regressing speed. So look for Allen to come clutch on short completions, but DJ Moore and Romeo Odunze to be the main targets, especially when going down the field. Then we have T. Higgins, somebody who let's ask a question for, what is going on in his mind? The man is playing for a team that he has to be traded from, who also will not give him the contract amount that he wants. And now we expect T. Higgins to go out on the field, be 100% focused, and play at his best? I don't think so. Higgins will produce being the number 2 option on the field. However, don't expect him to put up his usual. The man had his worst receiving year last year by a mile, posting about 400 yards less than his two 1,000-yard seasons previously. Higgins is on the downfall. He is very frustrated. And while he's still going to get great targets, the offensive line is still not great for Burrow, and they're going to have a struggling time in the passing offense. And finally, likely one of the biggest appointments that I've seen in football in recent times, that being Marquise Brown. After posting only one 1,000-yard season in Baltimore, Brown took his butt to Arizona, where he put up some subpar 700-yard seasons with single-digit touchdowns and recording under 60 receptions. Brown was supposed to revive his career with the Chiefs, especially all of Rashee Rice's controversies and looking like he's not going to play. He was set to be the number one option, but he did hurt his shoulder. He's looked at to be out about 4 to 6 weeks, so he will likely be back for the Chiefs' home opener barely, but Worthy and Rice, with their speed, with their youth, with them being just a lot more efficient, they're going to be looked at as bigger targets than Marquise Brown. Avoid Marquise Brown at all costs. And finally, the final position of the day, you have the tight end position. For me, there are only 3 on either side that I would both draft and avoid. I would look to draft Trey McBride, Cole Kmet, and Dalton Schultz. With McBride, he was a top 5 for total receptions last year amongst tight ends. He was top 6 in targets. He has a lot of upside, especially if Marvin Harrison Jr. is able to distract defenses away from his spot to get him more targets. And with McBride, I would also be very focused on the quarterback situation. Kyler has had some injury problems, and if he is out of the lineup, it makes things a little bit more difficult with him, even though potentially him being out of the lineup means a lot more short passes for that Cardinals offense, which could benefit McBride. So you never know, but there's always that uncertainty at quarterback for Arizona, just seeing as Kyler's health. And then with Cole Kmet and Dalton Schultz, both of those guys had great seasons last year. Both rank around top 11 in every statistic among tight ends. And the question is, for both of these guys, is do upgrade offense in both cities take away from their production? We already know some of the big players that Chicago has. The Texans, getting Stephon Diggs, getting Joe Mixon. Does that shy away and put Dalton Schultz in the shadow where he's not going to be able to get the receptions that he had last year? If he is, he's still going to have really great production, so we're looking to pick him. And finally, the avoiding ones, I have Kyle Pitts, Brock Bowers, and Noah Fant. With Pitts, I've never been the biggest fan of him. For being somebody who is supposed to be one of the greatest tight end prospects of all time, his career has turned out pretty average so far, and I believe the 4 years that he's been in this league, the man has only posted a 1,000-yard season in his rookie year, got hurt the following, and then listed a subpar 600-yard season this past year. So 3 years for him, this is his 4th. Now, yes, some of this does come down to quarterback play and coach scheming, but even now with the new look Falcons, Pitts is the 3rd guy in line on the offense between Robinson and Drake. He has just not shown the ability to score the football like he did in college, only having a season of 3 touchdowns maximum. With Bowers, it's very similar thing. Staying on this generational tight end prospect, hey, Brock Bowers, I'm not low on his ability. His ability to play pretty much wherever he wants is incredible. But just like Pitts, I believe that Bowers will be the victim of bad QB play and a defensive-minded head coach that will not be able to use him correctly. And finally, you have Noah Fant, who has not really shown anything since departing from Denver. 500-yard seasons, injuries, and seasons with only 50 receptions total does not move me much. And that's it for me, guys, today. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I hope that you guys found this guide helpful. I hope that this helps you guys in some of your drafts, that this gets you guys closer and closer to a winning team where you guys can potentially make some money or maybe even just win a trophy and pride if you are in a just a fun league. Look for these players, like I said, for in your draft. Some of these, avoid them. But I wish you guys good luck on your draft endeavors. Looking forward to the start of the season. Thank you guys for tuning in. I hope that you guys have an incredible day. Again, if you guys are watching this on YouTube, please feel free to subscribe, leave a comment below, share with your friends, and like the video. And please follow us on all social medias, TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. All the ads will be down below in the description. Thank you guys for tuning in. This was the Play by Play podcast, and I will see you guys on the next one. Peace.